has already given you a sense of the finances of the college and the incredible changes that we've seen over the last 9 years. I want to give you just a little bit more background there and then talk about the operating budget that we'll present to the Board of Trustees next Friday that will begin our fiscal year on July 1st of '08. We received news yesterday from the National Association of College and University Business Officers that Dickinson's returns for fiscal year '07, ending last June 30th, placed us 85th out of 785 institutions nationally. So our returns, our pure returns on our endowment investments, were in the top 11% of all institutions nationwide, including the Harvards and Yales and Stanfords of our country. It's pretty significant and incredible. But what's really more important for us is the long-term stability of our endowment and the long-term growth that we have seen. If you look at the chart behind me, you'll see that over the last 15 years, we've achieved returns of 11% in good times and in bad times. And that includes 3 years of negative returns between 2000 and 2002 when the stock market was in such a decline because of the tech bust. This 11% is particularly critical for Dickinson because the importance of the endowment is in the long-term stability of our institutions. If you think about what goes on with an endowment, we spend out of it at a rate that allows us to grow it over time and to maintain the purchasing power that we have for the generations to come. So we're constantly trying to balance what we spend today on our students with what we have available to spend on the students in the next generation and the generation after that for the next 225 years. And it's that constant kind of balance that helps us to figure out how much we can spend and how much we must save for the future. It is our institutional permanence. Bill also showed you the growth in the endowment, and I think it is really important for us to think about what this growth can do for us and what it still challenges us to do in the future. In 2000, the Board of Trustees significantly changed the way it approached the endowment. We built a very small investment committee, the Board of Trustees, 6 investment professionals, all of whom are on the board now. There were 4 at that time who were on the board and 2 of our alums who came to join us for the investment strategy sessions. And all these people are significant players in the investment marketplace. Engaging our alums then in subcommittees, we started to look at alternative types of investment strategies that were not normally used by institutions of our type. Rather than thinking in terms of traditional portions in stocks and a portion in bonds, we started to look at opportunities growing in the financial marketplace. And these alums helped us think about things like distressed debt and hedge funds and emerging markets, places that we'd never played before. This is where the big institutions do put their portfolios and why they do have such extraordinary growth and returns on a given basis. I wish I could put my retirement there, and I can't do it, and I wish I could do it for you as well. But these institutional portfolios are very, very well diversified, and the point of it is to take the volatility out of the marketplace, trying to find ways so that we can invest so that when something's going down, something else is going up. And we take the volatility out of our portfolio because the purpose of an endowment is to provide consistent support for program. If our endowment does anything for us, it gives us the permanence of programming excellence. There's no other reason to have it. We don't have an endowment so we can watch it grow. We don't have an endowment so we can just think about the numbers getting bigger. We have an endowment so that we know we can support excellence in our academic and residential programming. And we want to do that over time. So this investment committee worked really hard at it, and we were able to grow the endowment, and it did put us in a financial sense in a new sphere of influence. But the other institutions with whom we compete have also done this, just as Bill said. If you think about it, they have approximately the same number of students we have. They charge about the same amount of tuition, room, board, and fees. What makes them different is how much they have available coming from the endowment on an annual basis, the spending, the stream of revenue that comes out of the endowment so that they can fund excellence. And that's what we're really trying to achieve with our endowment, the kind of institutional permanence and financial advantage that an endowment gives to us. How do we determine this? Well, we think a lot about this thing called intergenerational equity. How much can we spend and still grow the endowment for the future so that we're never disadvantaging current students or future students in the way we spend. In 2000, we were spending 6% of the endowment on an annual basis. We smoothed it out a little with a 12-quarter moving average market value, and then we were spending 6%. This is not sustainable. All studies show that anything over 5% starts to erode the purchasing power of the future. So one of the things we knew in 2000 was that we had to bring our spending patterns down. We were spending too much from our savings account. And we've done that in a very slow and methodical way since 2000, so that this year, for the first time, we are now at 5% spending policy on our endowment, and that is sustainable in the long term, maintaining the purchasing power for the future and still providing advantage today. How much of this then comes into our operating budget? You know, it's really hard to figure out, okay, we got all this money out there, what's it mean for us today? How much can we spend in our operating budget for salaries and for building maintenance and for library books? Behind me, I hope. Nope, go back one. We're ahead. There we go. Endowment spending then flows into the operating budget. And as you can see here, in the red on the right-hand side, $8.75 million will come from the endowment into the operating budget in the coming year, FY09. The turquoise part, I guess that's what that color is, the $2.2 million at the top on the right-hand side is a portion of the endowment that was restricted by donors, and they said, we want this to go to the Trout Gallery. This is to provide funding for the Clark Forum and things like that. So it doesn't come into the operating budget, it's restricted to a certain purpose. But of the $8.75 million that does come into the operating budget, over $4 million of that will be for scholarships. So think about the $354 million that Bill was talking about and bring it down to $4.8 million that we really have to fund a lot of the initiatives that go on the campus. There's a big difference between $354 million and $4 million. At least in my mind, there's a big difference there. And that's what we really have to work with in the operating budget. The revenue budget in 1999, 10 years ago, looked like this. Do we have the right one? Yes. And quite frankly, it was very unhealthy. If you look at the blue piece of the pie at the bottom, you see that that's a transfer from reserves. What was happening in 1999 was that we were actually taking money out of our reserves to cover 10% of our operating budget because we were running a deficit. And we were running a deficit for a couple of reasons, but the primary one was that we were discounting away 50% of the revenue coming from our students for their tuition dollars in the form of financial aid. That's not a healthy way for an institution to run. About 35 to 40% is a much more normal way to discount. So we were running an operating deficit and we had to do something significant. At that point in time, too, we were spending 6% of our endowment on an annual basis, and that wasn't sustainable either. But we were doing it trying not to go into a deficit budget, and yet this is what happened. So about 8% of our operating budget was coming from the endowment. About 10% of the operating budget was coming from our reserves. We were eating our future in a sense, a financial sense. So this was an unsustainable budget. If you look at the budget that comes up for the coming year, it's very healthy. Our discount rate's now about 33%. That's very sustainable in the future. We've now gone to over 10.5% of our operating budget coming from the endowment. Again, we're trying to grow that. And that is our future. We want more and more of our operating budget to come from our endowment. So of the sources of revenue, we've now come to a very healthy place. We've also gone from a $55 million operating budget to a $100 million operating budget in 10 years. It's pretty amazing when you think about the dollars. If you look at the expense side of the operating budget from 1999, 10 years ago, you'll see about 60% of the operating budget going to people, salaries, wages, benefits. And actually, that's exactly the same percentage that we have now. Different dollars, but the same percentages. Debt service is about the same, as is our capital commitment, and that capital goes to projects, physical plant projects, library books, computers, and that sort of thing. About 5% of the operating budget in that point in time. For the coming year, the pie looks a lot the same. The dollars are a lot bigger. 60% of the operating budget still goes to people. Our commitment to our people is absolutely critical to the future of the institution. As Bill said, when things were tough and we were running a 10% operating budget deficit, we did not hand out pink slips. We were committed to our people, and I think it has paid off in the kind of commitment that people have for our institution. I'm finishing 20 years on June 30th, and I know many of you have been here. Marie, how many? 53 years. So there's a lot of longevity in our community. So we now have a very healthy operating budget. Our commitment to our people is our most critical component in the operating budget. You think about total compensation of about $60 million. That's a significant portion of the dollars that come into the college. And we have made a significant change moving toward next year. As Bill said, approximately 4% increase in the operating budget for salaries will be a part of the budget we present to the board. Now, I want everybody to realize that this does not mean 4% for your salary or mine. Part of this will be used for cost of living increase. Part of it will go to some new positions. Part of it will go to equity increases for people whose positions are out of kilter with the market. They're no longer competitive in terms of salary ranges. So there are a lot of things that will be happening in those salary pools. And everybody should realize up front that that does not mean everybody gets 4%. So there'll be a cost of living increase and a lot of other things happening in there as well, about $1.7 million. Additionally, we'll be adding about $500,000 to the operating budget on the benefit side. As Bill mentioned, last year we all received 5% into our retirement from the college. This year it's 6%. And next year it will be 7%, the college's commitment to our future after we leave Dickinson and enter retirement. Additionally, the college puts about 1% into health care for our retirement accounts as well. It's called Emeritide, and you all get materials from them on an ongoing basis. Healthcare costs do present us with a major challenge, and the Planning and Budget Committee has a subcommittee that's working on this. We are committed to trying to keep our own participation in our health care at a reasonable level. It is very difficult to do. Health care costs rise at about 10% a year, so we're working very hard to keep this in a reasonable way. We work hard on wellness, and many of you have participated in the wellness programs. We're working with other colleges in a shared service consortium to try to give us a larger group so that we can keep our health care costs down. And we're working through a number of scenarios in the Planning and Budget Committee for this. But remember, there are a lot of things happening on campus. We've restructured the teaching load, and I know Neil will talk about this. The 5-course load began this past fall. That means that over about a 5-year period, we're going to add 20 faculty positions to the operating budget. We've already picked up 13 of them, 3 in the coming year, 10 in the last 4. And we've also picked up one other faculty line into the operating budget that was funded from another source in the past to make that permanent. There are a lot of costs that impinge on us that we really don't like and that we would rather do without, but in an increasing regulatory environment, there are additional costs for accountability and compliance as well. So all of these things have an impact on what we have available in the operating budget. Additionally, I think we were all shocked with the tragedy at Virginia Tech last year, but it did bring home a sense, the Board of Trustees and all of us on campus, that we really must do more to make this a safe place for all of us, for our students, our staff, our faculty. And we have put significant money in the operating budget in the current year and for next year to deal with this. And when we had our snow day a month ago, we all received notification through that system. So there's a brand new system and some new security officer positions that will help us there. Technology costs more all the time. Online journals are very expensive. And in the next 3 years, we will become a wireless campus. So there's money in the operating budget to do that. But physical plant does take more and more of the operating budget. They do an incredible job. All of you on the plant staff know that you're working very hard on a lot less. We do need to put more money into the renovation of our campus and also the funding for the incredible science facility. There is another wing to come. This all takes incredible amounts of money. We are spending approximately $7 million a year on principal and interest payments on $105 million of debt. So that is a large portion of the operating budget as well. And the next steps, just give us more challenges, more things to think about as we go forward. Continuing to transition to the 5-course load means another 7 faculty members that will have to come onto the operating budget. Increasing our scholarship funding, and Bob will speak to this as well. Changing demographics are putting incredible pressure on the college and colleges of our type to think about where students are coming from and what they're looking for in their colleges, and we will have to increase our scholarship funding in order to be competitive in this marketplace. That means increasing discount rates and decreasing net tuition revenue, which means there'll be less money available to fund all the other initiatives that we have. And we have to fund the completion of the 3rd wing. The 2 wings that you're watching grow right now on the Rector Science campus will be completed this coming summer, but there's another wing that must be built in the next few years, and that will also be a multi-million-dollar project. And even more significantly for all of us will be the future of our institution and what it looks like. The Campus Master Planning Study is incredibly visionary and exciting, but it will cost hundreds of millions of dollars, and how we finance that in the future will be a challenge for our finances.